Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona with producer Lucia helping us out as we'll get out to Churchill Downs for a preview of a graded stakes race on Saturday. This one is the Grade 2 Chicago. It's going to go as race number 9. We've got filly and mare sprinters here, David, going 7 furlongs, maybe a cut below the tip top of the division. Some of these horses dropping out of the Derby City Distaff. That was a really tough race, and that's sort of the top of the division right now where you have Copy in there, Ways and Means, I think are horses that are sort of the measuring sticks. Vava was so good about a year and a half ago, and she'll try to regain some of that form. Emory has been a cut below the tip top. I think she's been a little disappointing this year for someone who's been a fan of hers. I was hoping for her to take a little more of a step forward, and she hasn't really been able to do so. I think those are two of the main players, but I feel like you can make a case for some others in here.
Yeah, the class relief is definitely going to help those two horses that you just highlighted, since the Derby City Distaff came up as tough as we expect the Breeders' Cup Distaff, or filly and mare sprint, I should say, to later in the year. This is a race that was upgraded by the American Graded Stakes Committee from last year to this year. It's now a Grade 2 event after previously having been a Grade 3, and that's attracted a pretty strong field because,
Yeah.
as we said, they're getting some class relief, but this is still a pretty competitive event.
Let's take a look at the pace projector, see what Timeform US thinks. Remember, you can get these Timeform US pace projectors and past performances individually or as part of the all access past performance package there at shop.drf.com. Gray Lightning up front. And then Brightworks, another one. I mean, this is a Grade 1 winner, David, who has been a graded stakes winner at 2 and at 3. She's just been a little unlucky, stringing races together, but she certainly has some talent and she likes to be forwardly placed. Anything surprise you about the projector here?
No, the number 3 Gray Lightning, her only chance is to try to get in front of these horses early, so you'd imagine she's going to get an aggressive ride. And those drawn outside of her, like Brightwork, Vava, they've got tactical speed, but they've never shown themselves to be need the lead type. So I think they'd be perfectly fine to let Gray Lightning go up front if she's hell bent on getting to the lead.
In a lot of the races she's in, you'll see Zietloos towards the back of the pack. She likes to make that one late run. Very consistent closer there. Let's meet the field for the Grade 2 Chicago. I went back and forth with Emory here, David, because I respect a lot of her ability. I really respect what she's done. And even this year, I think she's had a couple tough trips in the inside information, in the Madison, sort of like in between trips where she was kind of asked all the way around to kind of use her speed. Didn't really get much of a chance to settle. Honestly, thinking the Derby City Distaff, you look at the 4 horses who were in front of her, Copian, Hope Road, Ways and Means, and Scylla. They're probably just 4 better horses than her at this point. I don't really think it's much of a disgrace in finishing behind them. I'm just sort of curious what tactics they'll choose with her from the rail in here. Do they try to maybe get a little more aggressive? Do they grab a hold and sit behind? That would be my concern. I think from a class standpoint, she certainly fits, but I'm wondering like who she is as a horse right now.
I've got to say, I've been a little bit disappointed in her form so far this year because she felt like the kind last year, the way she finished up her season, might be able to take that step forward and become a Grade 1 quality filly as a 4-year-old. And she hasn't quite proven it yet. I thought she got a pretty good trip in the Madison 2 back. She had every chance at that race. The pace wasn't that fast, and she couldn't seal the deal that day. I'm not going to be too hard on her for the Derby City Distaff, but I will say I thought she got a much better trip than the other horse we'll
Great
talk
trip.
about coming out of that race, and she just wasn't nearly good enough against those horses, and she's just not taking those steps forward I would hope to see from her, Gino. And you mentioned her drawing the rail. I think that might be a problem for her because while the number 3 might go to the front as a long shot, there are going to be several horses jockeying for position in behind her. And I always worry that a horse like this could get a little shuffled back inside, and that could be an unfamiliar position for her.
Yeah, she doesn't really want to come from way out of it. She's going to get bet in this race too. While I certainly feel like, she shows up with a better race and she gets a good trip, she's one of the best horses in this field and she's one of the more proven. But those are some questions that you're going to ask for a horse who could be a pretty short price in here. Minkx Palace is a stakes winner and she loves Churchill Downs. I do feel like there's a group of horses who is a little more proven and kind of a cut above the rest in here. And I would need to see a little bit more from her personally. She did just lose to Too Sharp. We see a couple of these fillies and mares who were behind Too Sharp, who earned a career best 95 Buyer speed figure, winning that winning colors off the bench that day. What do you think about Minkx Palace?
Yeah, it just feels like there's a pretty wide chasm between the top contenders in this race and the tertiary contenders, and Minkx Palace kind of falls into the latter category. And I think she'd have to improve quite a bit to get on terms with the favorites in here. Not to knock her form, because I mean she ran well to win that Rock Solana 2 back, though she did get a pretty good trip in that spot and just wasn't good enough for the winning colors. And I think this might be a tougher spot than that.
Gray Lightning is a multiple stakes place filly. She's run some big figures, 94, 95 buyer speed figures at Parks, but the recent races at Hawthorne, at Will Rogers, and not even successful at some of those lower level races and lower level tracks. So this does feel like a step up in class for her. She'll probably just try to be winging it early.
Yeah, you'll see that she earned those 90 plus buyers at Parks back in March and April of 2024 and was actually sold at auction, I think, right around then for $370,000. The purchase has not really worked out because she's been unable to reproduce that form in some tougher spots recently. And she's just kind of hard to like against a field that's this tough based on her recent form.
Bright Work is a grade one winner and has won graded stakes races at 2 years old and at 3 years old. Now she's a 4 year old. She's going to make her second start back as a 4 year old after 7.5 months off. And David, in the first start back as a 4 year old, she was also in that grade three winning colors. Not a really good spot for her because she just caught a horse that freaked that day. Nobody could really keep up with Too Sharp, who was just much quicker, cleared the field, and everyone else was kind of running for the minor awards. I like that she was able to shake some of the rust off. I like that she should be able to step forward off of that. I guess my main concern is she really a 7 furlong type horse? I know she got that, but I could see her getting a pretty good trip in here, not far behind the leaders. And I think this horse is really good. She just had a tough time stringing races together through the years.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if she was ever going to get back to that 2-year-old form when she returned last year, but she did it right away, actually beating Too Sharp when she won the Prioress
Yep.
off a very long layoff last August at Saratoga. And that was a really good effort, the best performance that she's put forth in her career. She regressed second off the layoff last year and then went away for a little while. You mentioned the winning colors being potentially a good prep, and I agree. I mean, she was never beating Too Sharp that day, and at least she got something out of the race because they all had to run fast to chase that horse that was just blazing a path on the front end. So if she can move forward from that performance, I think she's got a shot in here. I still think she would need possibly a new career top to beat a field like this.
Vava was so good last year, middle of 2024. She's at the absolute top of the division. She's winning this race right after winning the Grade One Derby City Distaff. And then she tailed off a little bit towards the end of the year, but you can go through each of those races, especially the last two, the Filly and Mare Sprint and the Breeders' Cup and the Derby City Distaff, make some excuses for her. Her ceiling is the best in this field. We've seen her throw up some of the highest buyer speed figures, win some of the best races against some of the best horses. You just start to ask once they have a couple poor races. Do they still have some of that best A game effort left, right? But as you were pointing out, she did not have the best of trips. You can also say a sloppy racetrack on top of that. So you could probably make a couple excuses for her last race.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me watching back that Derby City Distaff replay that it was actually Calvin Burrell riding her, I would have believed it because this horse could not have been closer to the rail for the entirety of her trip. And I don't know if you really wanted to be that close to the inside path on Kentucky Derby Day when the track had taken so much rain and it seemed like there was a lot of better running being done down the center of the course on Kentucky Derby Day at Churchill. So the fact that she was just inside and so close to the rail every step of the way, and then getting a little shuffled back coming to the top of the stretch as the speed started to fall apart once the main players took over that race. It just felt like she was always in the wrong spot that day. Now, Gino, if that was the only poor race on her resume, I would be eager to excuse it and better in a race like this. The problem is, as you were alluding to, she kind of tailed off at the end of last year too, and you
Yep.
wonder if it was maybe more than just the trip last time, the reason that she was a little bit dull, because I have trouble making excuses for the Ballerina or the Breeders' Cup, and now it's 3 in a row that she's been disappointing. So she's got to get back on track, but I think she's going to run better than last time.
Marmalade Sky will make her first try against Stakes Company. She's won 2 in a row, steps up, and both those wins have been here at Churchill Downs. And David, this is a trainer, David Jacobson, who can certainly get horses really sharp and string off a bunch of victories in a row. She just feels like she's going to have to step up a lot based on speed figures to compete with some of the best horses in here.
Yeah, she's been in top form for herself recently, but that form is not going to make her too competitive in here. And she probably was going to lose that last race if the runner-up had not bolted on the far turn. That horse just was getting out the entire way and went out to the outside rail at the top of the stretch and still finished second in the race. So Marmalade Sky probably should be coming in off a second place finish against much, much weaker.
Harbor Springs is the next one up. She's grade two placed. She's just another one to me that feels a cut below the Vava, Emory, maybe my main squeeze tier of this group. Right Work, even I think it might be in that top tier. I feel like I played her when you and I previewed the Roxalana last time, and she was third. She was behind Minkx Palace. She's just going to have to improve a lot off of that here, and I'm not sure she's going to be good enough to compete with the top horses in here.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'll say I didn't love the trip that she got in the Roxolana because she was sort of wide around the entire turn. She was four wide around that bend and then just kind of flattened out in the late stages as you'd expect a horse to after losing so much ground. Still, I have trouble pointing to the race prior to that that really makes me want to bet her in here. So I thought she was a couple low.
Peagle is the next one. She'll make her second start back of the year after layoff between November and May. She won in the slop last out for her first start as a 5-year-old. And I do think this mare might be a little bit better than her speed figures, but she's another that she's not really running races fast enough to compete with Vava, Emory, if those horses showed up with a really good effort. What do you do with Peagle in here, David?
I'll say if you'd made me pick one of the horses that was going to be 12 to 15 to 1 or higher in this race and say I want to use them in a trifecta, it'd probably be her
Yeah.
because it just feels like she's in really good form right now. I think the 7 furlong distance is just fine for her. And she's got a jockey on her back in Luan Machado, who's probably not going to ride to win this race per se. And I'm not saying that as a knock on him. He's just the kind of jockey that's going to take back, let the horse get into a rhythm, and pick up some pieces at the end. That's his style. And that could actually work out pretty well in this race. And I could see her maybe, rounding out a trifecta or superfecta at a price.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you're looking for maybe an overachiever in this race, she is usually one that doesn't get bet quite as much, especially in spots like this. My main squeeze is a horse who I've chased a few different times and feels like she's got a big win or two in there somewhere. And overall, her form is really not bad. She's going to have to turn the tables on Emory and who has defeated her a few different times, but not by a whole heck of a lot. She'll make the third start of her form cycle. She was wide and she kind of clipped heels and she took a really bad step in her most recent race. That was on May the 10th here, David. She still moves to the lead, gets a little bit tired losing to Jody's Pride and Sterling Silver in the Ruffian. So what do you think coming out of this race for my main squeeze?
I just think she's had some minor excuses in each of her last 3 races. I mean, she faced Emory a couple of times on either side of her layoff from October to April last year into this one. And while Emory beat her in both of those races, I thought she arguably ran better than Emory both times because there was no closing going on in the Raven run. She was the only horse that made a run from the back of the pack up to get second. And then the Madison, she was so wide every step of the way, trying to make up ground, going 4 to 5 wide around the turn and flattened out a little bit as you'd expect a horse coming off a layoff like that to do. But I thought ran a more encouraging race than Emory did. And then you mentioned clipping hills last time in the roughing. It just seemed like Manny Franco had a little bit of trouble getting her to settle coming out of the chute that day. And it looked like he thought she was going to settle, and then she ran up on heels and clipped heels, and that's never ideal at any point in a race. And she moved a little bit too soon, got aggressive after that. I like her cutting back from the mile to 7 furlongs, and I think she's good enough to win a grade two. She's done it before, and drawing outside, I think I see a pretty good trip coming for her.
She's a multiple graded stakes winner. She likes Churchill Downs, and she'll probably be twice the price of the horses like Vava and Emory, who we think she may be in the same level with. And right, she might be just as good as them. So, from a value based standpoint, she might be one of the interesting horses in here. Claret Beret was one of the harder horses for me to get a read on because she was fine. She was a solid, like, allowance horse. And then she moves into the Safi Joseph Jr. barn and she wins the race by 19 lengths. She earns a 95 Beyer speed figure. She absolutely crushes. And we see this sometimes for Safi Joseph Jr. getting new horses, really stepping them up. Now she will step up and face a lot tougher group in here. But how do we get a read on her, David?
Anybody who wants to bet this horse at 6 to 1, you can have her. I don't get this horse at all, Gino. I mean, she has form for her prior barns that don't make her remotely competitive in a race like this, and we're just supposed to base a positive opinion on her off this one race we're taking a look at. Where yes, she wins by 20 lengths, but she was beating nothing close to the quality that she's facing here. And if you watch the start of this race, it's a little hard to see, of course, because it's a Gulfstream replay. But she gets left at the gate and breaks slowly and then has to rush up. And if that happens against a field that's this good, she's going to be in real trouble. So I don't trust her at all.
No. And we move to the outside with the horse who actually has been pretty trustworthy through the last couple years. She's a 5-year-old mare, and even for her running style, she's won 9 of her 18 starts. That's Zietlos, who is a grade 2 winner. She'll make her second start now as a 5-year-old. But I will say, for a horse with her running style, it is kind of interesting that she hasn't won beyond 6.5 furlongs because you sort of just think, oh, yeah, 6.5, 7 furlongs is perfect for her. But she's spent most of her career at 6 furlongs. So curious just to see what it will be like for her. But she is the type of horse, David, you kind of know what you're going to get. If she gets the trip, she will come running. She's going to sit back. She's going to make that one late run.
Yeah, and I guess you could point to her most recent 7 furlong race being the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, where she was probably a little overmatched anyway. She was a big price in there, and she hadn't tried 7 furlongs for a long time prior to that. So maybe we shouldn't make too much of that. But I agree. I mean, you do get more pace generally in shorter sprint races, and she's a horse that needs some pace to close into to be at her best. So we'll see if she can improve a little bit off her return in the ski pat last time. I think she's going to have to if she beats a field like this. But she is a horse that seems to run well at Churchill Downs every time that they bring her over here.
There's the field for the Grade 2 Chicago. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment in the section below and let us know who you like in this race. David, let's move to selections here. How are you going to stack them up in the Grade 2 Chicago?
You could probably tell based on my comments earlier. I like the number 9, my main squeeze in this race. I think she's had excuses recently. I love the 7 furlongs for her, and I think drawing an outside post against a field like this is going to allow her regular jockey Louis Sias to work out the right kind of trip.
The two horses that I am looking at betting would either be Brightwork or my main squeeze. I have them in first and fourth. I have the second and third horses, like I think the safe horses who probably run well in here, sort of the class of the field with Emory and with Vava there. But I'll look at two horses who are maybe going to be, close to similar prices. I think Brightwork might be a bigger price, but I wouldn't be shocked to see my main squeeze even float up a little bit. But we'd love to hear from you who you play. For me, it's 4159. For David, it's 95 and the 11 in the wait 9-5. Who's in the third spot for you, David? 9-5, 11-4. I couldn't even read it on the graphic there. I was going to say, might need to get the eyes checked. So whoever you play, however you play, then we wish you the best of luck.